If you're planning a wedding, you know that this process can be a really emotional time. And if you've recently gone through an experience with illness, trauma, grief, you know that can make this an even more complicated time. If this resonates with you, then keep watching through to the end of the video, because I'm going to share the really important lessons that helped me navigate wedding planning when I was going through a deeply personal and hard time of healing. Now, before we get into it, I make weekly videos about living an intentional, meaningful, impactful life. So if you want more content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. I'm Komal, and back in 2016, I survived cancer and then was hit with an intense neurological illness that made me leave my startup in New York City. I had to move my whole life back to Canada, and this was just a few months after my amazing fiance Mitch proposed to me. Needless to say, this was a couple years in my life where I had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. When I got back to Canada, I couldn't work, and so I went through the process of healing and continuing our wedding planning process at the same time. A lot of unresolved emotions came up during this time. One of the biggest things I kept coming back to was, who am I to be planning this massive, extravagant wedding when a few months ago, all I wanted to do was just be healthy and live and survive? I felt like I'm so lucky to just be alive. Who am I to be asking for any more than that? And those questions stayed with me for so long through the wedding planning process and made things so much harder because it just felt so selfish to want any more than I'd already been given. I'd been given a second chance at life, and it took me a while to realize that I needed to own that and love the shit out of that reality instead of denying myself the joy that I deserved by telling myself I didn't deserve to have a beautiful wedding. Now, I don't know if this is a common experience for people who have gone through similar things like me, but I assume that it is. And it's definitely something we don't talk about enough, so that's why I wanted to make this video. So now, I'm going to share the 4 things that I learned through this intense process of wedding planning after healing from a major illness. Step 1, let the grief be a part of your journey. Honor the transitional period that you're in and know that it's going to be complicated and hard, and that that's okay. Not only are you going through the process of getting back on your feet, but you're also going through the process of becoming a wife. You're going to be having a lot of thoughts and feelings about your own identity as you move into this next process of life. So you're going through a lot. Be gentle and be kind with yourself. My second step is to work with a therapist or a coach if you have that available to you. I worked with a trauma and mindset coach through my recovery process, and it helped me so much, not only in getting into the joy of wedding planning again, but also to just reconcile with the different parts of my life and the recovery that I was going through. If this isn't available to you, search for great inspirational content online. Check out Abraham Hicks, watch Super Soul Sunday videos. Be in that kind of knowledge so that you can let your brain expand beyond your healing and to take in other people's experiences that are probably like yours. Step 3 is to develop a non-negotiable self-care routine. Wedding planning is stressful on its own, especially if you're working and doing it simultaneously and likely doing home improvements and life improvements and all of these things all at once. So adding surviving and overcoming and healing from grief, trauma, or illness on top of that, and you have the perfect recipe for physical and emotional burnout. I was very intentional in the planning process to have days marked off in my week every Wednesday or half a day Friday to do self-care appointments, like massage, like different healing practices, carving out that time for your therapist or your coach, and just generally carving out you time. You have to take care of you through this whole process. It's so easy for us to suppress our emotions and just go into do mode, but that can leave you super burnt out, and it can leave you in a place where you can't even enjoy your wedding, let alone feel well and be healed. So really take care of yourself. Really prioritize true and real self-care. About 6 weeks before the wedding, I carved out a day where I scheduled every single self-care appointment, hair appointment, nail appointment, waxing appointment for that 6 weeks before the wedding, so that I knew that those things were going to happen and be taken care of, and even doctor's appointments, so that I knew that I was up to date, up to speed, and I didn't have to think about it. A big part of the wedding planning process is you can have decision fatigue, so when it comes to self-care, that's going to usually be the first thing you cut off your list when you're feeling overwhelmed. But if you have it scheduled ahead of time, you can make sure that you feel great. It was the game changer for me in that last month before the wedding and in the months leading up to the wedding, because I always had time for me, for my recovery and for my healing. And it allowed me to actually love the shit out of my wedding. Now, whether or not you're planning a wedding, do you have a self-care routine that you've been pretty good at sticking at? If so, comment below with warrior. Now, step 4 to wedding planning after grief, trauma, or illness is to not beat yourself up if this isn't an entirely joyful process. This is similar to step 1 of letting grief be part of the experience, but this one in particular, for no bride is the wedding planning and wedding process 100% joyful. That is an unrealistic expectation that we project onto brides. So let's completely demystify that. Just let yourself be where you're at 100% of the time. But you are recovering from one of life's hardest challenges. Let your resilience guide you. Let your heart guide you. And let yourself feel your emotions. Now, I hope this video was helpful for you. It's one that I wish I had early in my wedding planning process when I was just coming out of my illness. And if you're planning a cross-cultural wedding, make sure you check out my video from last week where I share my top tips for planning a wedding that is authentic to you and your husband while taking into account your cultural traditions. And to keep this wonderful conversation going, go follow me on Instagram where I post daily just for you. Now, before you go, I'd love to hear about how the wedding planning process is going for you in the comments below. And don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can hear from me every Tuesday. Can't wait to see you guys next week. Until then, my warriors.